Hello and welcome to the Uneducated PT podcast with me, your host, Carl O'Rourke. The goal of this podcast is to bring on interesting and knowledgeable people from all walks of life, learn a little something from each conversation, and for you, the listener, to learn something from each episode. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, press the box below, show some support, and I'll see you on the next episode. All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. So how we're going to work it and how we always work it is we'll do it in kind of like a podcast format first. With Brad, and then any questions, I'll just let Ross on there. Any questions you have, once you think of a question, just put it straight into the chat box, and then we can do a little bit of a Q&A at the end and go through them questions in a little bit more detail. Kirsty's on, Melissa's on, welcome. Orla's on. Orla, I hope you're feeling better. Lucy's on. Well done, Lucy. Jennifer's first group call. Welcome, Jen. Annalise is on. She's in the car, I think. Haima's on, she's in the car, I think. Sarah, I'm just going to put you on mute there, Sarah, all right? Ross has just jumped on as well. Okay, deadly. All right, cool. All right, so we'll get cracking. So first and foremost, Ross, Brad, do you just want to introduce yourself and tell the group a little bit about what you do?
God, what don't I do? Let's be honest with you. So just like Carl, I'm an absolute knobhead in the nicest possible sense. Loud, obnoxious. No, I'm joking.
You're
I'm a
not.
coach. I've been a coach for a long period of time. I used to be morbidly obese. I used to be a fat, depressive mess. And there's a lot that we'll probably touch on during this call, which I'm very, very open about. And some of it, though, I'll come with a bit of a trigger warning in the nicest possible sense with my life and story, depending on what as we go through. But yeah, morbidly obese, depressive, suicidal, turned into skinny, anorexic, ill individual that thought I was doing the right thing, then got mega fat again, then got absolutely handsome and in incredible shape. And I've done over 10,000 PT sessions, become an online coach, a very successful online coach, thousands and thousands of transformations, which then led me into also mentoring and coaching other coaches to be better coaches.
Yeah, I think we'll go through your actual career and what you've learned in terms of the amount of clients that you've worked with, the struggles that you've seen come up in terms of them, and essentially what you do now. But before we get into that, do you want to just talk a little bit more about even your journey before you even actually started coaching, how you actually got into the fitness industry and the struggles that you had before that and how that came about?
Yeah, I'd have to really, if any of you got questions on this, honestly, like feel free to open. I'm not ashamed to ever answer any of this, but the story is that immense that it would take up multiple hours of your time, because I've done talks specifically on small topics that have taken hours for people with specific illness. But long story short, I was brought up by essentially alcoholic, heroin and crack addict parents. So lots of abuse, lots of violence, seen a lot of fucked up shit growing up, and food was always like that kind of thing for me. I was never fed by parents. It was always like, right, they're all off their head now, they're asleep, so I can now go and eat and snack galore, which was one of the main catalysts and triggers to having no rules around food, no discipline with food, no relationship with food, no understanding with food. Was quite a chubby young lad, as you can probably imagine, and growing up with the type of parents and lifestyle that I was, it's very hard to fit in school. As in, I'm very hyperactive. You'll learn that very quickly. Very energetic, but coming from a very, very poor background, and all your mates are very rich, posh types of individual, you very much lose yourself, which is quite funny because we were speaking about this not long ago, weren't we, Carl, at the event about losing your identity. I don't know where you want me to dive into this, but essentially throughout my youth, was just a little shit in school, kicked out of school, arrested left, right, and centre, bad behaviour, probably just looking for levels of attention. Had to make money in ways which you shouldn't be making money, but when I was brought up in a life of all what I knew was things like that, to be able to feed myself, support myself, these sort of things happen. Long story short, I've got 2 children. During my first child, when I was around 21 years of age, both of my younger brothers got taken off my mum by social services and placed into my care, and I was in my care for a long period of time. During this stage, I was really fat, really depressive, really suicidal. Had an attempt on my life while I was also going through a major court case, potentially going to prison because of being caught for said things that were no good, which caused a miscarriage for the partner that I was with at the time. And the only reason I didn't go to prison is because of the great work that I did with both of my brothers. That there's a big story there, but that was essentially the catalyst for when I was like, fuck, I got spared prison, like potentially lost a life as a direct result of my actions and the stress that I put people through, and realized that actually being fat and all these things that were leading in my life weren't positive. So I had to start doing something to make positive change, which elicited the kickstart to a weight loss journey, which then led into fitness and so forth.
And you were looking after your brothers at that time as well, as only a baby
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah. Literally, it was on my 20. They literally got given to me on my 21st birthday. Like on my 21st birthday, social services, police at the door. Here's your brothers. And just the context, like, I was 21. My middle brother was 13, and he's got Asperger's, high level of Asperger's. Pretends he's a cat half the time because he hates human beings. And my other brother was 8 at the time. So as you can imagine, 21 years old, I'm still a fucking kid myself, you know, doing all sorts of stuff that's up to no good because it's the only way that I knew how to survive, be able to pay for a house that I lived in and support a partner and X, Y, and Z. I still also had to show up and be present, even though I didn't want to, for 2 children that I didn't want to have. But obviously, they were brothers. I had to look after them, and they had a kind of similar journey to me growing up. Not as extensive with like hard drugs, but their dad was a severe alcoholic, so there was still lots of abuse and bits and bobs inside of the house. So like I had to kind of like care and nurture them essentially. But yeah, mate, it was a lot all in one go. A very lengthy court case, while also battling 2 kids inside of school, one with special needs, and making sure that they did well. I did so well with them actually that my mum was able to get them back, because not only was I helping my mum rehabilitate and break up with a toxic thing, and making sure that they looked after themselves and got better in school. My autistic brother actually was staying in school instead of doing a runner. But all while that was going on, obviously I was an absolute crumbled mess, and the pressure that led onto that obviously led to lots more eating, lots more problems, and
Yeah, there was something that you said there that really struck a chord with me there, even when you said like growing up kind of in poverty around people who had a lot of money, and there was, you know, the overeating is kind of like a food scarcity thing, isn't it? It's where like you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, and that leads people to overeat them when they get the chance to.
Yeah, I used to find comfort. And do you know what? And here's a thing for you, and I'm sure loads of people relate to this. And Carl's one of the coaches that I massively respect because he's a fucking incredible coach, and he will say stuff as it is. And if he doesn't know anything, he will go well out of his way to go and understand more than anyone I've ever met. And something that's to be said, and I don't think enough of this is spoken about for people, but let's look at some level of disordered eating, right? When you get people that have like anorexia and bulimia and stuff like that, they have a level of comfort in feeling empty, right? It allows them a feeling of self-control. I used to find, and still do at the age of 33, like 12 years into this journey, I still feel satisfied and comfort in the sensation of feeling overly full to the point that I nearly feel sick, right? I don't have a problem with food anymore. I mean, if I'm emotionally volatile, I've got stuff going on or lots of stress, because we're not all superhumans. Just because we look like it sometimes on social media, we still have shit that we've got to deal with from time to time. Carl's Irish, so of course he's got issues that he's got to deal with from time to time, right? But I will find myself still, sometimes I'll eat and I'll overeat, and in the moment I feel a bit sick and a bit like, it gives me a level of comfort which dives all the way back down to childhood, because that was when I felt safe and good because I'd finally eaten. So there's lots of things that don't really get spoken about for a lot of people who are overweight. It's sometimes it is actually a case of when you've gone through emotional trauma and bits and bobs, and that was like your only sense of happiness, it stays with you as some very deep rooted neurological based like issues.
So difficult childhood, you know, at 21, having to basically parent 2 kids, you know, having to put kind of food on the table, having to make money, dabbling in drug deal and all this stuff in the courts. When did fitness come into this and
Yeah,
essentially help you?
so I'll be honest, some of it's a bit of a blur. So in order to actually say the right things in the right order is a bit difficult, because it was
Yeah.
such a hard time in my life, you know, juggling with therapy and so much going on. Sometimes things get like a little bit blurred, but in a hindsight, essentially, I got spared prison. I got given 500 hours of community service, a 4-year suspended prison sentence, and loads of conditions that I had to show up weekly for certain bits and bobs of that. So first point of call was I couldn't get up to no good because I was being watched often, you know, drop-ins on the house and this, that, and the other. So rather than being occupied of finding ways to make money, I had to think, fuck, what do I do here with myself? And through my ill activities, I'd also developed and built a window cleaning business. So I had a way of earning income. And the problem that I had is I couldn't really keep up with a day's work going up and down ladders. The weight restriction on the ladder was 16 stone. I was 24, 25 stone. And I was having to buy new ladders every couple of months because they were fucking bent, in half from climbing up them every single day. And in my head, it was like, hated how I looked, hated how I felt. I've also got quite a few health conditions. So I've been kind of diagnosed with fibromyalgia recently. I was born with severe levels of hypermobility. I was actually born without hip sockets. So I was born with hip dysplasia. So I had to be put in a specialist harness. So I've dealt with chronic pain my whole entire life. And I had SI joint problems. I've had spinal issues. I've got decompressed spine throughout and 2 lower damaged discs. And it was stuff that I've always had. And because I was always in pain and I was always used to suffering, I just kind of dealt with it. And when all this stuff went on and I realized I kind of got spared it in my head, I don't know where it really come from, but there was a couple of issues. It was obviously I'd lost a child, and part of me was like, fuck, like, no, that's a bad thing. And family's quite an important thing to me, especially not having it and always wanting it. It's always been quite an important thing to me. And I was like, I don't want to be that fat dad. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. And these were some of the roles that played in my head, as well as a lot of guilt for putting people through situations to make them feel a certain way. And then there was the fact that it was like, I couldn't feel any shitter than I already did. I'd had multiple attempts that I'd tried in my life, and it was like, if I have to stick around, like, I at least want to make the time that I stick around more favorable. And I started getting obsessed when I was window cleaning, listening to podcasts. Carl know the likes like Ben Coomber and stuff like that. Right, these are people that I learned from the early stages. But I didn't really know what I was doing, and I've got a very obsessive behavior. So, when I do something, I get very obsessive with it. And I got hooked up into keto because at the time, like, everything I was learning, keto was this incredible thing. And as I was learning about keto, I then started learning about calories, but I didn't understand that if I ate fuck all calories, it causes problems. So there's me dieting on sub 700 calories per day while running a window cleaning business, eating nothing but meat, like literally snacking on pepperonis, going to McDonald's sometimes, or just getting the burger out of it just to eat while I was on the go. Made myself very fucking ill, but I lost like 8 stone in a very short period of time. I think it's like
I seen that the transformation was.
Mate, I look like the wake up call for me here was sad enough. I had a few friends that had come out of lengthy prison sentences, and from the estate that I'm from, I'd seen some of them, and one of them took me out all day, and I wondered why. And he took me out all day because he genuinely thought I'd become a crack addict like my dad, to lose the weight. He didn't believe that I'd been in this fitness journey, because I wasn't so fitness with weights. I was going to the gym and just moving around, but I was doing like 2 hours of cardio a day, as well as like full-time work, passing out halfway up ladders and stuff like that. But I felt good because I've been accomplishing something. And then when the wake up call was like, Brad, everybody thinks you're on crack, mate. Like, I was like, shit, really? And it was almost like I see myself with a very different reflection from that moment, which led me to go, I'm a fucking failure. And I put all the weight back on and more. Developed binge eating again at a very fucking high level, piled all the weight back on in just the same amount of time that it took me to lose it, essentially, which then led me to a stage of, well, depression, here we go, not fucking doing that again. That was a lot of effort. I tried something for once that's positive and failed. And again, that whole negative feedback loop of you're fucking worthless, you're pointless, you're shit, which stemmed from childhood, all come back into play. And so the behaviors with food become really, really fucking difficult again. During, like, again, I'm just trying to be quick with this. Again, if you've got questions, because I'm going to imagine there's going to be a lot here from
they can put them, any questions you have, to shoot them into the chat, and we'll go through them near the end anyway.
Yeah, and during this stage, I'd obviously regained all this weight, and then along came my first child.
Yeah.
That was when I was like, okay, this was actually the reason why I was like, okay, I've actually got to fucking do it. I know I can do it, and I did it in a fucking really difficult way, but this time I have to do it in a slower way. I have to learn properly what to do. I learned how to do it. So fortunately, when you're working 6 to 8 hours a day in a window cleaning job with nothing but yourself, it's quite easy to go ahead and put headphones in and study all day, every single day. I'll be up a ladder 2-3 stories high with a notepad in my pocket, and I'd hear something on a podcast. It was like a bit of knowledge, and out I get, and I'd write it in there, 2 stories high, wind burn at me, shit in my pants, but I know I need to get this bit of information down, which fed me into this massive loop of making sure everything I did perfect. You know, there was no, I got so obsessed with the likes of biomechanics and endocrinology and understanding a lot about, you know, coaching from a philosophical level and a psychological level, like so many different ways. I just wanted to know everything. Again, because I'm slightly autistic. If I'm going to do something, I want to know everything about it. I want to know every angle, even if it's pointless information for me. I want to make sure I get to know it. And then so that's why I was like, right, going to do this gym thing again, but I'm not going to do cardio. I'm going to try and lift weights. I'm going to try and get strong. And because of my health conditions I was aware of at the same time, I know the only way to have a better quality of life as I grow up is to develop strength and make sure I'm maximizing this. And I very much got a bug for it very quickly. And I'm sure Carl will probably share something about like my transformational pictures and bits and bobs like that. Like I made a very drastic change in a very short period of time. And what was really mad now that I'm obviously looking back is I'd had all these massive transformations, but I still felt shit every single time, no matter what stage I looked at. Because although I was very much focused on dietary, very much focused on training, very much focused on looks, I attached my self-worth and my value and how good I was based to an image and scale weight. And I actually haven't got many pictures of me at my leanest, best shape because I actually thought I looked like a piece of shit. And I would speak to myself saying, you're a failure, you're a piece of shit, because I attached the whole notion to when I achieve this, I will finally feel like this. You know, and
do you think that that's why it's and with everything that you went through in your past, do you think that's why it's important that when people are on a fitness journey, because a lot of people go on fitness journeys thinking that it's going to be the be all and end all in terms of solving all their problems, but a lot of the time what they really need to work on is obviously, you know, their body, their health, but also up here as well.
Yeah, so one of the things I always say to people is obviously being a coach as well, and we've actually spoken about this before. I always say we work from the neck up, then the shoulders down. I don't care if you come to me and you tell me that you've got 2 stone to lose because you've got a wedding coming up. No, you need to feel better about yourself and more energetic and proud of yourself. Weight loss is the byproduct. And I think a lot of coaches, and this is the thing that I deal with inside of my business, helping coaches, and it's something that me and Carl share a lot of the same values with, is we think that losing weight is going to help us experience the lifestyle and the emotions that come alongside that with what we see on social media and the perceived notion of, oh, they look happy and they're in great shape. And it's typically the notion that you typically see. I've had so many women, and I'm sure Carl has as well, where they tell me they want to feel better. So I'm like, let's work on the actions that make you feel better. Let's work on the actions that make you happier. Let's work on the actions that energize you more. Weight loss will be the byproduct of that. And I've had so many women come to me like, Brad, I'm so happy. Thank you so much. I'm wearing smaller dress sizes. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I'm like, you actually haven't lost that much weight, but you've just developed a much higher level of confidence and more self-worth and less critical on yourself, that you're willing to wear stuff and not be so worried. You know, and it happens quite a lot. There's some women that I deal with that actually are genuinely very happy being bigger women, but they just tied onto this notion that I'm depressed, I'm sad, somebody's left me, or something's been said, or something's happened, I need to lose weight and things will be fixed. And it's like a lot of the time they just need a higher level of mental resilience. They just need to have a higher level of empathy for themselves or understanding of certain situations to be able to handle it. And I think that's one of the things that like I really hammer home. If somebody comes to me like, Brad, I'm going on holiday in 10 weeks, I need to lose weight quick, I won't work with them. Because for me, I'll only work with them if they're willing to work on the actions, but not expecting the result to be for the holiday, but the actions to help them for when they're back from the holiday so that they feel better. Because I won't be a part of this vicious cycle of people just helping people get fast transformations for the sake of a transformation. And I think that's what you do quite as well, isn't it?
And you've been there where you've gone to the extreme where you've lost all the weight, but also still hated how you look. So therefore you didn't actually get what you wanted in the
yeah, man. Like, I would say I've been happier with my body as a he looks like he lifts, but he also definitely looks like he doesn't say no to pizza. And like I had a higher level of confidence and happiness looking like that because of the work that I've done extensively. Obviously, like I'm a level 4 mindset transformational coach, and I'm one of less than 100 people in the world with a specific qualification around mindset coaching. I'm in some of the highest mentorships that there physically is around personal development, and it's something that I literally sing from the fucking clouds everywhere. And it's like, if I hadn't done that work, I wouldn't be here today, because actually the catalyst with the guy that I work with in particular is somebody that I signed up with the very next day after my 4th attempt on my life. That was quite an extensive one. So it's like, if it wasn't for the mindset work, like nothing else comes in alignment with like you can't have great mental health without physical support, and you can't have a great physical being without mental support. They come hand in hand, and depending on where you're at your journey and when you come into it, it will just depend on which percentile needs more focus.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk to you about next is you getting your first mentor and what that did for you in terms of what you learned from being coached yourself, rather than just
So
being a coach.
my first coach was the mindset coach. So even now though, I've actually got a personal development mentor. I've still got a business mentor. I've got a fitness coach, but I've actually got a mental performance coach. Okay. So I've got coaches in specific areas. I'm a fucking busy guy, and I like to take away all decision making for myself, because decision makings can lead to emotional responses. And if I'm in a high volatile stress state, and we've got to remember, stress isn't always a bad thing. A lot of people label stress in a bad way. Like, we can have high stress environments that are positive, you know, and I'm in that state a lot. That's where I thrive. That's where I perform. Cole knows exactly the sort of stuff that I can get up to. And people say to me, they think I'm superhuman, but it's not. It's just those are environments that I'm really well at. But I have to take away all decision making, and I have to take away all the ability to make decisions myself. So when I started working with the personal development mentor, the first thing that I started learning was learning how to question myself. So I don't know if anyone here has read the book, The Chimp Paradox. It's very good in the sense of understanding when you're making a logical decision versus an emotional decision. And the first thing I was able to do with that mentor in particular was learn to actually like dissect my decision making, and a lot of it was turned onto food. He wasn't working on food specifically, but it translated into that world. For example, if I was stressed and I wanted to eat something, it was like, well, do I want to eat this because I'm hungry, or do I want to eat this because I'm stressed? And if I'm trying to eat it because I'm stressed, like, is this going to make me feel better after eating it, or is this going to make me then feel worse? And I think having a coach help you question yourself is probably one of the most powerful things on the planet. It's something that Carl does really well. I was actually quite shocked the first time we ever started speaking about mindset stuff, because I didn't think, you know, waving dildos around on Instagram, I didn't think that's the sort of go out you out from personal development. But it's like, I think is the ability to be able to question yourself from a logical perspective it's game changing.
Yeah.
So to explain that journey that I had is very difficult, because it was so impactful, so hard, and so fast. It's fucking horrible at the same time. As you can imagine, you're having to really fight your own ego with shit. Oh, I'm just so busy. Shut the fuck up. No, you're busy because your brain's taken up so much time and space focusing on negative energy, which wastes energy, which then you think you don't have time. So working with someone really helped me learn to slow down the way that I think, slow down the way that it is that I make decisions, learn to be able to take a few seconds before I actively eat or take an action or do something, learn to play chess, not checkers, with my actions, to be like, well, if I do this, what's the next thing that I'm likely to do? And then the next thing, rather than go, I'm going to do this, and then I deal with the consequences, and then there's another problem. So that there was probably like one of the biggest, well, I'm still with the guy 10 years later. Do you know what I mean? So,
and this was exactly Lucy's question, which I think you just nailed the head on. She goes, you mentioned a few minutes ago that you were able to change your mindset around emotional eating. How did you manage that? And I presume then, so a big part of that is questioning your actions and taking that pause.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult thing, and something that I still have to do to this day and age is, some people don't have the intelligence, and when I mean intelligence, I'm on about emotional intelligence, right? Don't have the emotional intelligence to learn how to handle their emotion, or how to dissect their emotion, or how to get themselves out of thinking and feeling a certain way when they're triggered by a certain reaction. So sometimes I actually don't think there's a negative element to using food as advice to kind of help you deal with an emotion. But it's when you learn to go, okay, I recognize that I emotionally eat. I recognize when I do emotionally eat this, it can get out of hand. But when I do this, it almost acts like like Mario Kart, and you've got the thing that slows you down and the time slows down type situation. I'd almost picture it as like, well, when I do this, if I've given myself a list of foods that I know that would be very hard to overeat really quickly on, when I want to, like, you know, binge emotionally eat, it will give me the space and the time to sit there and go, well, is this going to make me feel any better or not? It helps having children, because we've got fucking tons of little 100-calorie chocolate snacks everywhere. So like, it's a pain in the ass opening 100 wrappers, you know, but it gives me the chance to start eating and be like, well, actually, why am I doing this? Am I emotionally eating here, or am I tired, or am I like, if I had a really stressful day? And I think sometimes rather than just trying to avoid or cutting out emotional eating, if you're an emotionally volatile person, it's more about what food rules can I put in play? If I know that I'm going to do this, when's the likelihood that I'm going to do it first? What can I put in play as a protective mechanism? So I deal with a lot of people that have like, you know, emotional eating disorders, disordered eating and things of that nature. And the first thing I always say is I'll always dissect it, like, when's the time that you typically stress eat? Well, it's when I get back from work and then the kids are in bed and whatever. And it's like, I'll give an example. The amount of mums in particular that work full-time jobs, they get home, they start cooking dinner, they're starving because they've not looked after themselves all day because it's up, get the kids ready to school, off to work, manic, manic, manic. They get home, while they're cooking dinner, they're having handfuls of snacks here, there, and everywhere, to the point that by the time dinner's cooked, you're actually not hungry anymore, but you still eat your dinner because you've made it. Now, we won't go into the science of blood sugar levels getting risen up, ghrelin and leptin, having a fucking field day, a trampoline inside of yourself. Then you sit down, and although you're full, your body's literally having hormonal warfare telling you need to eat, right? So the first things that I look at is, okay, cool, if you, because we also got to understand, and I don't know if Carl would agree on this, and it would be really good to get his opinion on it. It's not, I think a lot of people really label emotional eating and stuff when like, it doesn't need to have a label.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, sometimes
I'm an emotional eater.
Yeah, or like, let's say, for example, you've had a long day, you're stressed to high heavens, which is normal, right? Because most of you don't, if you work, you don't have an emotional trigger or a routine to help clock your mind off from work mode to mum home mode. So you carry that energy, that high stress energy, which you need to have at work to be able to perform, you know, because high stress is high energy. It's needed to require work, right? And then you come into this environment, but you transferred and kept that energy and you come into this place. It isn't going to fucking serve you, right? So then when you do eat, because you're just busy serving everyone else, you go, oh, it's because I've had a stressful day at work. No, you ate because you haven't eaten for a while and you wasn't paying attention because your attention is diverted elsewhere. That's not an emotional eating issue, but it's very easy to go and label it as. And I think sometimes people kind of, you know, get into that realm. And sometimes I think it's also a case of like, if you're really tired and you've not managed your energy really well, and you're going to sit there and eat in front of the TV, and then you can't stop yourself from eating. Also remember, you're paying attention to something else. You're not paying attention to the food that's going in. So are you emotionally eating, or are you just like subconsciously snacking away because you're enjoying it while you're doing something else? And I think learning to question yourself like that can really help, because a lot of people fall victim to emotional eating and go, I'm an emotional eater when I'm stressed, when I'm tired, when I'm this. Everybody has their thing that they do in certain emotional states, right? But the moment you call yourself something, or you do something, you become a victim to the label. And the first thing you have to do very quickly, and this is just my opinion, a lot of people have very different opinions, but because I've been in that situation, I'm quite strong with my opinion on this one. The moment you let go of the power and you disempower it, you become the victor in that situation rather than the victim. And so what I would do in a situation like I do with my clients, I'm like, well, cool, if we know that you typically binge, overeat, overindulge, overenjoy, right? That's a word that I like using. I overenjoy stuff sometimes. Go, well, can we take a percentage of your whole daily allowance and factor it in for that first? Then we reverse engineer your diet. Are you willing to suffer and be a bit more hungry at these points of time, so that when it comes to the end, are you now a victim of emotional eating if you fitted it all in and you was able to actually factor in the snacks and the crap or whatever it needs to be? Because when it comes to making that decision, half the time you won't want to do that anyways, because you've given yourself permission to.
Yeah, I think it's also important, and I love that you said that a lot of it's like labels. Like, there's not a person on the planet who doesn't emotionally eat. Like, emotionally eating is like, you have birthday cake, that's emotionally eating. You have pizza.
And guess what? That's a happy emotion. Like,
Yeah.
and when I want, what do we do when we want to celebrate?
Yeah,
Food,
we
drink.
food at weddings, at birthdays, at everything. So emotional eating isn't a problem, but when it becomes your only coping mechanism for stress, for heartache, for whatever it is, you know, then it can become a problem. And it's like you, Brad, like you would eat food out of high times of stress when you didn't know where your next meal was coming from because of the environment that you were brought up with. But eventually, over time, you found other outlets, and the gym actually became an outlet for you, even to have something else other than to overeat to make yourself feel better.
And do you know what's really mad? It's actually funny you say that, because where I was, I'm very much on the autistic spectrum, but I'm very functional, right? I was very funny for years with, like, my son's on the autistic spectrum as well. And I never ate outside of about 10 different food groups until I was in my late 20s. Like I didn't try steak until I was like 27, 28 years old. Now I pretty much have a steak every single fucking day, right? But it's like I was so funny and strange with food that I only stuck to certain things because of fear of not having control over certain situations. And again, it was because of what happened. And something that like the gym really helped me to do was it helped me to open up my environment of being willing to try other things, because I noticed how much better I felt after eating certain foods, like how the digestion, like all of you will experience your energy is shit when you've gone on a binge of eating loads of crappy food, right? Or like my partner is a prime example. She's cut out sugar immensely for the past few days and she's been feeling dizzy and got a bit of a headache today. That's a common sign of something you're eating that's not really serving you. Like, is it wrong to have it? No, but it's like we get used to certain habits and responses with certain things that we eat and we don't pay attention. We don't ask ourselves that question. Like, we suddenly feel tired or we feel ill, the first thing that goes, oh, I'm coming down with a cold, right? Guaranteed change your eating habits. The likelihood is that will change very quickly or you get healthy. So it leads back to that whole like learning to question your actions at the same time. If you learn to question yourself, not just be like, oh, I'm getting ill, actually analyze yourself. Why am I feeling ill? What have I been like the past few days? What has my eating been like? You very quickly start understanding where your actions come from.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that you were afraid to kind of go away from the then maybe 10 foods that you might have before. I think that happens to a lot of people when they're first on a weight loss journey, and that's why they love meal plans. It's like, oh, I stuck to these foods, and if I go away from this meal plan, then I'm going to put all the weight back on, because they essentially don't trust themselves.
Yeah, massive. Do you know, it's mad. I was having this conversation with I think it was Lewis the other day. We're speaking about meal plans. I'm very heavy against giving clients meal plans. I don't do that unless there's a very specific response for like photo shoot competitions or anything along them lines. And I'll only give them to the type of individuals that like it will serve well. I'm a massive fan of meal plans for myself, but that's because of the lifestyle and type of characteristic I am. If
And the
I've
work
got,
you've done.
yeah, and if you, with the amount of choices that I have available to me, I end up getting like an executive function disorder, especially with a high capacity type of brain. It's like, fuck, there's too many decisions. I can't make a decision. I'm just going to get the first thing that comes to my mind. That's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I have stages, and with me and my coach, actually, we work very closely together on this. And we've realized recently, it's like, we're not meal planning me, because at the moment where I'm going through so much change at the moment with certain directions in business and other bits and bobs like that, my life is so different day to day that actually there's more risk of me not sticking to the meal plan process. So we've gone back to a calorie and macro perspective. And I think like they're all just tools that serve you at the right stage. And again, the only reason I know what serves me well is by asking myself the question, if I had meal plans, is there likelihoods that I can stick to this with the types of days that I have and having access to a microwave and this no, so that's a catalyst for disaster, you know? So there's a lot that's said about with coaches where they don't like meal plans and they hate meal plans and it's very much slated them, but sometimes they really serve a purpose for people with emotionally eat as an example, right? We want them to have autonomy over themselves over food.
Yeah, that's the big part.
Yeah, but sometimes I actually think it serves a time and a place to have a certain percentage of your day calculated, not necessarily given to you, but you make decisions that you make with food that become part of your routine, because it takes the thought and decision making process out of it. It's just like, at least I know that I'm catered for and I'm looking after myself with this. And then you only give yourself a little space for decision making. So like for me, breakfast, lunch, third, fourth meal, exactly the same. Last meal of the day, oh, I can't wait to have this today because I made the decision. That's the thing that I'm going to look forward to. So it very much suits different people, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with you. Like, I'd have the same breakfast and lunch every day, and it's more so just because it takes the decision fatigue out of my choices, so I can keep my mind, keep clarity on what I need to make decisions on. But the whole point is that, like, I understand that if I wanted to go off what I usually eat, have something else, there's nothing wrong with that. Whereas some people who haven't kind of understood or done the work in terms of their nutrition don't understand that, okay, you don't actually need to follow this to get results, but you could follow this and get results.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for giving power to the clients by teaching them and giving them the tools to be able
Yeah,
to formulate a meal plan on their own.
yeah.
So
Look,
if a client actually does want it, I'll never actually write it out for them. But if they ask me, I'll be like, what do you think you could do? What is it that you think you're going to need this? Like, again, it's all questions.
yeah.
Help them, understand why it is they need it. And like when your client's put in there, she's ready now to make a meal plan with the knowledge that she has. And that's the powerful thing about it. Like you should have enough knowledge and understanding and education around food to one, know how you feel, how you digest it, what you enjoy, because we've all got different taste buds. If any one of you asked me to make you a meal plan, I can guarantee you it will just be filled with the foods that I fucking enjoy, right? Even if you gave me a list of all the stuff that you like, I'm going to make it with the stuff that I like and try and cater it from that, because I'm going by what's creative and what I enjoy, you know?
I wanted to ask you a little bit about, so obviously you're coaching coaches at the moment, you've been coached, you've been on all ends of it. What do you think makes a good coach client relationship so that the client can actually see success?
Well, I fucking love this, because this is actually, I'm going to give two flip sides of the coin here, because I have to play devil's advocate in both areas. So as a coach, I'm very involved with my clients. Like I know everything about them, their kids' names, their partners' names, like absolutely everything, because I want them to feel so open with me that if they're failing, I don't want to use the word failing, if they're not moving at the pace that they want to move at, or like they're kind of going in opposite directions to what the initial onset was, I want them to not feel afraid to go, Brad, like I'm struggling, things are going wrong. What do you think is going on? And I don't want them to feel like I'm going to be dictating to them and being like, well, you're not going to get a result if you're not doing what I told you to do. It's more of a question of like, why do you think that you're not able to do this? What is it about this method or this situation that you're currently struggling with? So have an extreme, like I'm a very open book. There isn't anything that you could ask me that I wouldn't be willing to tell you in detail, even down to deep traumatic things that I've worked through. I have no problem, and I pride myself on vulnerability, because that is what enables the women that I work with to be able to speak to me and feel safe, because they know I'm not going to judge because of the way that I am. And I think it's really important. The issue that we find with a lot of coaches is a lot of coaches don't have the tools, knowledge, or skill set to be able to cope with that level of vulnerability or the openness that a client may come to them with. So, for example, I have to help my coaching clients set a lot of boundaries with their clients based upon their comfort and skill set, but also what energetically drains them. So, for example, and I know Carl will understand this, as very giving, caring coach. Like my biggest value is giving, right? And I've got a motto that I kind of live by every single day, which is leave people better than I find them. I don't care if someone's in a fantastic position when I meet them, I leave them better than I find them. I could smile, make them laugh, whatever the fuck it be. They could be the happiest person on the planet, but my mission is to make them a little bit happier when I leave, right? And I've got the tools and the skills to have people unload on me some really dark, horrible shit I have to deal with sometimes, but I don't take it on. Sometimes I can do it, depends if I've not looked after myself. But a lot of coaches are trying to take on this notion that they can help anyone under any situation. And when we latch on to why people have certain eating habits, behavior habits, physical habits based upon past, similar to like mine, most coaches aren't equipped with that. 90% of coaches, I always make a joke, fell out of their mum's vagina in shape and seem to think that they can now help people. And it's like they haven't got some mileage on their wheels yet in order to be able to deal with that type of thing. I think it's a very difficult fine line, because to be an incredible coach, you have to be willing to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
You have to be willing to speak and be open, but that you also have to be willing to be firm in the sense of knowing where a place is. Like my clients nickname me a cunt, but a caring cunt, because I'm willing to say the shit that they don't want to hear, but I know how to say it in a way that doesn't offend them. Sometimes it does. And sometimes I'll blatantly offend them on purpose, but I'll put a little smile just to soften the blow, and dimples come out, and it kind of,
Shit sandwich.
yeah, and you get away with it. But coaching also comes with a bit of an off topic here, but this is why Carl was so good at this. You can only be a fantastic coach in certain areas of coaching if you've got personality to match it. And I think that's quite a big part of it. Having like a flexible personality to be able to cater to people's emotions is huge. But I see a lot of coaches get really damaged taking on lots of stuff from clients. And most coaches just want to save people and help people, but they do a work, they can damage the process if they take on too much. So it's a very fine line. Great relationship between coach and client is vulnerability and the willing to be as open as possible. But
What
it
about
has
the
a,
other side?
but on the other side, to make it a great client for like coaches, having them expectations and barriers of, oh, Josh, it's a very difficult question. I think the way that it works really well from a coach to a client perspective is if the coach helps elicit the response of critical thinking to the client very early onset, so that the clients understand that this is somebody to help me with my fitness and nutrition and help me have positive behavior change. They're not my therapist.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that's really difficult. Coaches don't set that boundary and expectation. And that's when they end up being terrible coaches, you know, and it's like, they're not at heart terrible coaches. But Cassandra,
would you generally recommend a therapist along with coaching?
So here's the thing. I hate therapy. And this is very controversial because I had therapy for years and it left me in a much worse place for a long period of time. It has its place 100%. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Therapy, I believe, leaves you stuck in the past. Most conventional, I've had CBT and I've had, you know, DBD, and there's a lot of different therapy types I've had. I've been through all the steps to wellbeing stuff and the services that there are in the UK. I've had private therapy. But what I found is a lot of it was how to figure out why you behave and act the way that you do based upon your past. And here's some tools to cope with when you feel like a certain way. But the thing that I always found missing from my own personal experience and with thousands of women that I've dealt with is there's never the steps of, this is what you went through, this is how you felt, this is why you feel this way, here's a coping tool, rather than looking at the other end and going, this is how you want to feel, these are the actions that are required to take it, and here's the tools to start moving that way. So I think it's definitely recommended if you don't understand why you behave, act, and think and feel the way that you do, because you need to have an understanding of it. But you need to make sure that you have it in a sense of making sure that there's positive enforced moving forward therapy. So although I don't like it, that's just because I've had lots of bad experience, but that was likely because I was in that area for such a long time. It was like, by the time I got therapy, I was already wanting to move forward, and all they did was keep bringing me back.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, I think it just has its place. Everybody, I think, will benefit from a level of therapy of some sorts. But if you're trying to get better at something, you need therapy in the sense of like future vision based actions, in my opinion.
So in terms of understanding why you feel the way you feel and having awareness around that, but not being stuck in that kind of bubble for the rest of your life. What's that saying? Like you don't drown from falling in the river, you drown from staying immersed in it. So it's like, get out of the river, get out of your kind of thoughts.
Sandra nailed it there. The past is the learning for the future. Yeah. So if the way that I always look at it, if we think of like, if we've had an injury, right? Let's say we've had an injury and we've hurt ourselves, but not like a blatant injury. We've got a repetitive problem. We're not sure what's going on. The first thing's got to have, we've got to diagnose the problem, figure out what's the repetitive problem that's leading you to the actions that's leading to the injury. Now, what muscles do we need to stabilize and support and strengthen in order to make sure that that never happens again? The way that I look at mental therapy, it's a muscle. You have to strengthen the correct muscles in order to not be a certain way, right? So, for example, one of the things that I used to do from being very insecure, because obviously when you're completely neglected by primary caregivers, it causes a lot of stress and a lot of struggle. And just to tap into something which I didn't touch on there for a lot of you as well, which blows people's mind. My mom's quite young. She had me when she was 17. During the time that both my brothers were taken up on mum by social services and placed into my care, when I had my window cleaner business, I had an employee, and he's a couple of years younger than me. And my mum wasn't getting any benefit money anymore for the children because she wasn't there. And my mum's got like osteoarthritis. She had like 2 knee replacements at the age of 28. Like, she's fallen apart, bless her, right? And also that is sped up by copious amounts of amphetamine use and lots of other issues like that. But she wasn't getting enough money now to be able to stay where she lived because she wasn't getting any money from the children. And I wasn't getting it enough yet. And obviously I wasn't earning the money that I was and needed to pay for things. And so I put my employee in her spare room paying rent in order to help. Behind the scenes, they were getting drugged up and drunk most nights, and my mum fell pregnant with him. So I had a mum that not only had abused my trust my whole entire life, she'd let boyfriends beat the shit out of me, laughed at it, and all sorts of stuff. When I saved both my brothers, managed to get them into great care, helped my mum escape an abusive relationship. I've done a whole training on this for some people. I don't blame her. I'm not angry at her because my mum only did the actions that helped her feel better in the emotions. She didn't do anything to hurt me, but she took the actions to make her feel better and didn't think about consequences, right? But like that whole entire process, there was something I was about to clack onto you, but I need to quickly remind me on that in a second, Carl. But like that whole entire process of like losing trust from primary caregivers led me to be such an insecure mess for such a long period of time that while I was having the therapy, it was just like, oh yeah, you're like this because of this situation and 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 this. I was like, yeah, cool. I understand that. How do I stop feeling that way? I understand why I feel that way. You're giving me coping mechanisms, but I don't want to just cope. I want to excel. I don't want to just, when I feel like shit, stop feeling like shit. I want to know, how do I turn this into a lesson that I move forward from, that I now thank as a result? And one of the things that I learned as a direct result of there is what I touched on there, is I learned to stop being a victim of my mum's a scumbag. She did this to me, how dare she do this, how she, blah, blah. To my mum was in a really bad fucking place. She just had her children taken off of her. She'd been in abusive, drug-fueled relationships her whole entire life and had no help to get out of that. And I put someone in the house who gave her comfort because he was there helping throughout the situation, which led to them drinking and developing a relationship behind the scenes, which they then kept hidden from me. And to the point that she found out she was 16-week pregnant. And because my mom's got a lot of medical conditions, she didn't know anything was going on. There was no signs, there was no showing, there was no anything. She was actually losing weight the whole entire time that this situation arose. So because I'd done so much work on personal development, I learned to understand empathy in the sense of she didn't do that to hurt me. She did that to do something to make her feel better. And she got put in a situation where, unfortunately, my 10-year-old son now has an auntie that's 2 months younger than him. So quite a situation.
So here's a question, right? So even on kind of victim mentality, because like there will be people, I think we all fall into kind of the victim mentality trap to some degree. Obviously, some people won't have as big of extreme cases. Like, to be fair, like a lot of the things that you would victimize are justified victim, but a lot of the time we'll end up falling into this kind of victim mentality, whether it's like, I couldn't get my training sessions, I couldn't do my steps because this is a problem, my husband's not helping me and the kids are acting up and they're keeping me late in work or whatever it is. How do we recognize that we're falling into this victim mentality and that it's not actually serving our best purpose in terms of who we want to become?
First thing that I say to anyone, the moment your sentence starts with, I feel like, you're straight away telling a story, and that's part of it. Right? And something that's really difficult to do, and I had to do this a lot, and it was something that I was very grateful that I learned from Paul. I don't care if your mum's just been fucking your friend and had a kid. I don't care if you've been left and cheated on. I don't care if you've just had your leg broken by someone hitting you with a car who was drunk driving. Find a way to thank them for it. Okay? And this is the hardest thing, and I can tell you I can do this in any situation. You've been through that. I've only touched on it. Cole knows quite a lot. Touched on 5% of the shit that I've been through in life, even over the past couple of years. Like, I've learned to be able to say thank you. I've had 3 lots of very extensive hand surgery, which you can see through here. These 2 fingers are connected. I wasn't able to. I've only been able to start training again properly after the past couple of years. What I'm trying to get at is when you learn to thank something, there's always a thanks for something. I'll give you an example. My hand was horrendous. I had an injury through a very toxic relationship. Big glass went all the way through my hand, severed the tendons to my hand. It ruptured. 6 months on a cast, physio, just to end up having to get it done again. This was all during COVID as well. So lots of complications, not being able to get surgery and this, that, and everything. I had 3 years essentially not being able to use my right hand. I can tell you now, Carl, give it a test. As a guy trying to piss holding with a different hand is a very different kettle of fish. It doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. You'd think it'd be simple. It fucking doesn't. Trying to wipe your ass with an opposite hand doesn't work, right? It just doesn't. Very different. Life was very, very difficult. But I was able to thank the situation, no matter, even though it cost me lots of money, lots of time, cost me the ability to drive, cost me the ability to get fat again because I couldn't train and old habits started creeping in. I was able to thank the situation because it helped me put my time and attention into things that I was neglecting, such as working on my education and my mental development in certain other areas. So though, yeah, I was able to lose out on certain things, it enabled me to develop insanely at some other skills that I'd been putting off for years. So though, like, whenever you got something bad happening, you still have to go, well, I can either choose to put the energy into complaining about how bad this situation is. I can choose to find something that I can channel this energy into to help me do something better. I'll give an example, like working with at one stage, I think it was like 157 clients that I had in total. I couldn't type because I couldn't use my fucking hand. Even now, I can't actually lift my index finger by itself, but I have to use the middle finger with it because they're attached. So I can't point. I do it with my kids all the time. I'm like, you little shit. And then I'm like, fuck's sake. I have to trigger finger them. I have to use both at the same time, right? But I had so many clients I had to type to all the time on the laptop that I stopped doing work a lot of time because I was letting it put me off. So it forced me to adapt and learn to think of other ways. And I realized that you can use dictation on the MacBook. So I'd speak to my MacBook to make it write out replies to people. But what that situation led me to do is it actually enabled me to unlock quite a few things in business and the quality of coaching I do, because I found alternative ways to go around things. It enabled me, like, because I've still done PT as well during some of this stage, right? It enabled me to coach people inside of a gym when I was doing PT sessions through better communication, because I couldn't give examples of it anymore. So I was able to just constantly look at, okay, cool, this is shit. And yeah, it's holding me back from doing this, this, and this. But look at all the things it's enabling me to focus on. You know, let's look at the situation with my mum, just because that's a prime example of like an extremity. It enabled me to have a lot more empathy for a lot more people, rather than just thinking certain people are scumbags because of their behaviors. Enabled me to think, actually, like, why do they behave like that? You know, yeah, I'm ambidextrous, but I can't write for shit with the left hand, you know. But it's like, it enabled me to be really, really good at understanding and looking at situations and analyzing it from a very different perspective. You know, and I think
how did you get better at doing that? Because a lot of the times we don't even realize that we're like, a lot of times we're in that situation where we're emotionally charged, where we're feeling bad for ourselves, and it's hard to find that kind of grain of sand, or that thing to be thankful for, or to improve that kind of emotional intelligence. Like, was that from the work that you did with Paul? Was that from journaling? How did you improve that?
that's from the repetition of doing the work every single fucking day and not getting rid of my coach, because a coach really should not be used to get a result and that's it, and then buy only. A coach is there to help course correct you. A coach should always be there for course correction. My coaches in all of my fields have a go at me that I don't speak to them enough. But I don't speak to them enough because I know that I've got my shit handled. But then when shit isn't being handled, I make them aware. I tell them what's going on, because I'm so critically aware. I don't think this might sound egotistic, but I don't think there's many people as self-aware that I've come across in my circle and in my life as myself, because I've done so much work on it. So when situations happen, I know when I'm behaving or acting, I'll be in a certain way, because I've done so. When I know there's issues going on, I'll lay it out. Like, I'll give you an example. I had a call with Paul today, Carl, funnily enough, about how I'm feeling about some certain situations. I had the answers and I was right, but I wanted a second opinion just to give me the thumbs up, because the problem is, when we're emotionally charged, we make emotional based decisions, not logical. So I wanted to make sure, was my decision logical or was it emotional? Turns out it was logical. I was right, was given a thumbs up. That then assures me that the decision that I made was correct. Whereas a lot of the time, even if we make a decision that is correct, if we don't get that little nods from someone, or that little like thumbs up from a level of authority or someone that we seek, we leave doubt. And any seed of doubt that you leave in your head stays there in the subconscious. And I found I'll use some examples actually. So with my fitness coach, I had a lot of changes in business and life and all sorts in a fucking very short period of time. Yeah, I went from losing 10 kilos again in about 8 weeks, now that I'm able to train properly and really started getting into stuff. And then life got mad busy, and I wasn't sticking to stuff, and I wasn't doing that. And my coach is a very good coach, very bodybuilder, because it's routine, structure, which is kind of what I need from somebody. But then when we realized that I was slipping in certain areas, I said to him, I was like, mate, I'm a bit disappointed in myself that I've not stuck to my food. I've not done this. I've not even been tracking, but I've been able to accomplish this. I've been able to accomplish that. I've been able to do that. And the trade-off, I'm willing to put a pause in progress in that area for the extensional progress that I've made in this area. But do me a favor, don't let me keep making a habit of saying, but I've made lots of progress here, here, and here. If the one thing that I'm paying you to help keep me on track with is this, and I'm doing it, don't let me outwit you being, I'm doing well here, so it's okay with it. So again, it's really important for a coach, not just for when I'm fucking up, but there's sometimes that I'm really excelling, but I have to get him to course correct me. Because I'm like, this is the goal. This is what I want to focus. We had to have a call not long ago. He's like, I hope that your goal and your vision is still the same. Let's have a catch-up call to go through it, because you've been saying a whole lot of noise, which is very different lately. And then when we got on a call again, he called me out on some stuff that I'd been saying. So again, it's like, although I'm very self-aware with situations, I'm very self-aware, but sometimes I need that. It sounds like you had coaches for years. Do you not think you would ever not need one? So I've had many of years in my life without having coaches. But I will always favor having them. You know, like, it'll make a lot of people feel sick, but I spend nearly $3,000 a month in total in my mentorships and coaching that I have. And I know that I'm very fortunate to do that. But when you see the hours that I work in, the businesses that I do in this, and I wouldn't be able to function at the level and do the stuff that as I do, impact and help the people that I do without it. So for me, that's a prerequisite to greatness, to being able to do what I do. You know, like, even if I wasn't doing some of the levels of stuff that I do, I would always allocate at least 10% of what it is that I have income into actually do stuff. So basically, I've entered into a long-term. Yeah, like I'm gonna like one thing I work on with a lot of my clients is I give them actually a financial spreadsheet to help them understand their incomings, their outgoings, and this, that, and every when they work with me. Because one of the first things that I say to them in my relationship with my clients is like, in my first couple of months with you, I want this investment to be paying for itself with the lifestyle changes that we help you make by making you actually aware of the stuff that you spend. And I don't want people to lose out on quality of life. I'm not the type of person that says, oh, we're to getting rid of a takeaway once a week. Fuck off. I encourage it, right? But I'm the type of person that wants them to understand the benefit as a direct result of it without getting too airy-fairy and too mindset-y and too hippie-like. If you are in a better place because you're focused on yourself and you're looking after yourself and you're heavily investing in yourself, better opportunities will come as a direct result of that. The amount of my women that I have told to go to their boss and say, what will it take for me to get a pay rise? What will it take for me to get a promotion? Because they're too scared to ask and they're just waiting for it. And I've given them confidence and just been like, you know, if you are working on yourself, do you feel you're a better employee now? Yeah, I've got loads more energy. I'm so much more productive. Okay, let's present that. You know,
I
so
don't, I've personally, for myself anyway, the minute I started investing in myself by investing in a coach, my quality of life drastically improved, my confidence in myself drastically improved, and then the opportunities that came off the back of that drastically improved. I think with someone has never had a coach before or doesn't feel like they should invest in themselves to get a coach, what they're essentially saying is that, you know, I'm not worth investing in myself. I don't have the, you know, self-esteem or anything like that to be worthy of being coached. And I know that there's a confirmation bias from me and Brad because we're coaches, but I think that's also because we've been on the other end of things as
I fell in. Ola, your question there is incredible, and I'll answer in a second. But sorry, don't forget this point. I actually got forced into the coaching industry. I didn't decide to become a coach. I was helping so many people naturally inside of the gym from seeing the positive change in my attitude and behavior, and all the people on my estate going, Brad come from this absolute lunatic booting off doors for people that owed him money and this, that, and the other, and coming through this life to somebody that's actually helping people, getting them in incredible shape. And I've got a screenshot of it somewhere. And I created a website, a blog, and it was called bradshealthtips.co.uk. And I've got my journey on it. I used to just write blogs, just teach people. And it was reaching people over the world. And eventually one day when the government were funding people to become coaches, I actually had a mate who was working inside one of the companies. They put my name into it without me knowing and actually put me through into the coach group. And I was never going to fall into it. Long story short, I ended up taking one of the biggest risks of my life when my child was only a few months old, and I sold my window cleaning business and only had enough money to pay for all my bills for the next 6 weeks. And I went to Pure Gym and I was like, right, I'm ready. And they're like, Brad, we don't have any spaces to take anyone on. And I was like, well, let me just pay rent. And I've got a magazine clip where I was featured in the magazine for being one of the fastest up and coming PTs in the country, you know? So it's like, there's a lot to be said from coaching, the feel good factor that I had from it, but it wasn't that. It was actually me investing in other people in a non-financial way as well. You got to remember, like, investing into coaching isn't always just a case of like you being coached. Like, even you helping other people helps you as a person, investing your time and energy into places. So rather than looking at it as like a financial metric, look at it as your energy. When you invest your energy into better places, better things come to you at the same time.
Orla has a good question there.
Yeah, like that's what it says. Do you believe in goal setting, or is the recommendation that there is no end point, no goalpost? Let's look at children, right? Children don't have many problems in life because they're always looking to be 1% better every single day. They're always learning. The brain thrives on education and learning and stimulus. And the moment like people start becoming depressed, low, hate themselves is when they are stuck in a repetitive notion of no improvement. So the moment you're stuck in a job where there's no improvement, you're just showing up, you're just doing stuff, there's no level up. I always like to say life is like a game, you know. We're always trying to get our experience points up. We're always trying to level up. We're always trying to accomplish the next boss. We're always trying to move on to the next thing. There is no fucking end point. And that's the brilliant thing about it. Because if there was an end point, you're like, yes, I made it. You would be so depressed because you'd be like, but what's next? And rather than looking at goal setting as, I can't wait to achieve this, it should always be, I can't wait to be that 1% better. I can't wait to be that little bit more effective. I can't wait to be that more efficient. And the beautiful thing is, though, is you also got to remember we've got like 5 key areas in our life essentially, and in Paul's world we call it the 5 Fs: family, finance, focus, fun, and fitness. Finance, focus, fun. Yeah. And it's like every single one of them is an area of our life. If we focus, think of it as like a big circular notion, and they're all in like, you know, 5 different categories. Sometimes you're going to put like a lot more percentile into improving in this area, and then your life's going to level up in that area. These other areas don't necessarily, like, you know, elevate at the same time. And the way that I always like to work on myself as a personal developer is I always like to go, let me work on my weakest link first. So for example, I know sometimes we do this like specific training where every quarter we analyze our life and where have we done really well, where have we excelled, where's the areas that we probably neglected a little bit and we probably want to improve on. And I look at a lot of the time, my family is the thing that I've not focused or put as much attention in. So I'll set goals around dating my kids more, dating my partner more, and dating my things more. And it's not that like I retreat or go worse at certain situations. It's just I've put so much energy and time into focusing on this area that was a weakest link prior, that of course something else is going to suffer. So for example, like a lot of you, if you're on a health and fitness journey, don't feel so bad if you're not making progress the way that you want, if you're excelling in your career or your business, because you've got to remember you can't transfer that level of energy in an even playing field across all areas. It's not going to happen. Same as seasonality. You're not always going to make the same level of progress in January as you are in November. You know, different things go on and different. The key thing is are you still trying? Are you still putting effort into it? And I think the thing is, goal setting is massively important, and it's okay for your goals to change. So we do loads of different techniques. There's a thing called a hot pen technique, which is essentially like I won't go into, it's a sciencey way of tapping into the unsubconscious mind of when you're writing about things that you want, right? And what we do is we set like a 3-year goal of what we want to achieve in different categories of our life. And then we plan the next 90 days. So go, what do I need to do within this year if I want to achieve this within 3 years? Then we break it down, go, what do I need to do within the next 90 days to be on track for this in a year? And then we break it right down until we go, well, what the fuck do I need to do today to work towards that? Because as long as we've got a North Star, we've got a direction to move towards. And it doesn't matter. I can't tell you how many times I've got like 60 days into my 90-day goal setting plan. And I get here and I'm like, I actually don't give a fuck about half this stuff. And I course correct myself, but at least I've set myself moving forward. The moment you're stagnant and you sit still, you're sat with your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, and you're just not improving. And if you think about a lot of the stuff that people say, right? Like when they're depressed after I'm not good enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, like I'm getting nowhere, I'm a nobody. They're not working on themselves. Most depressed people that I've come across, and I've helped a lot of people come away from medication, not by me like saying get off of it, but people actually wanting to experiment and be like, I want to get help with my doctor, reduce my medication and come completely off of it, because I'm starting to feel so much better now with the actions that I'm taking and looking forward to doing things in life that I don't think like I need these things holding me back because I can control it. Like I'm unmedicated, and for the level of ADHD and certain things that I've got, it's always highly advised that I should be, right? Being labeled bipolar, like borderline personality disorder, like emotionally unstable personality disorder, anxiety, beta blockers. I've been on all sorts. I'm actually sometimes just a little bit too excited and my emotions get a bit all over the place and I'm hyperactive, right? So I've learned to become self-aware. That's my level of medication when it comes to it. But again, the reason I'm so good is because I recognize myself and I'm like, what am I doing really well at? What am I not doing so well at? Okay, the stuff that I'm not doing so well at, what goal can I set to improve that? And I think sometimes goals, we get too honed in on a specific metric rather than just going, what's ways that I can be better? So I'll give an example. With like, if I like one of the goals I say quite frequently across the quarter for like a relationship, for example, is dates, a certain amount of dates across the next 3 months. You know, when it comes to like certain fitness goals, I don't always like it to be set on a weight metric. It might be because I've got a lot of health conditions, like I said, with fibromyalgia and all the damage and stuff. I can't lift the heavy weights and the shit that I used to do. So sometimes my goal will be to just do certain amount of sessions, like, and hitting a certain amount of total volume, which I'm not sure if most of you understand about total volume yet, but it's like I'll set goals that just give me something to focus on, because devil makes work for idle hands. If we are left with nothing to do, we are either solving problems or we are creating them. So I would rather spend my days and my weeks and my months solving things rather than spending days, weeks and months creating things that we then can't solve. So I think goal setting is a big thing there.
And you know what? I love the way that you said in terms of goal settings, like, 'cause whenever people hear goal settings, they hear of like financial gain in terms of a career or weight loss in terms of a fitness journey. But the fact that you said like even goal settings of, you know, dates with your kids, dates with the missus, whatever it is, or like looking at kind of relationships and all them other things that need to be set as well.
Think about this. A lot of you, if you struggle with your own self, like a lot of us, we're the worst, most horriblest people to ourselves. We're worried about the opinion of other people. Yeah, the shit that we say to ourselves is fucking relentless, right? Take yourself on a fucking date.
Mm.
You know, whether that's under the sheets with something that goes zzz, or whoever you go into the cinema, right? Like, take yourself on a date. If you need to go take yourself on a date, set yourself. I think Carl's next video is coming out soon. But it's like, take yourself on a date. If you notice that your relationship with yourself is pretty shit, take yourself on a date. Go do something. Go enjoy yourself. Go to like one of them like Boots or something and go pretend you want to trial their makeup to get a free makeover, you know, for the day to make yourself look good. Like, find things to do that just make yourself feel better about it, you know? And it's like a lot of people look at goals as if goals have got to be something massive. You know, they don't have to be. And I think it's really important as well, just to like recognize going, okay, I've retracted a little bit on this, but like, how can I just like make it a little bit better? So for example, if you notice, like, I do this a lot with my clients in their relationships. If they're like, oh, my husband's not really supporting me and this and the other, sometimes I set them a goal. I was like, okay, cool. You might feel like he's not supporting you. Have you ever thought that potentially if you sat there, if he's not going to do anything about it, why don't you just listen more first? Because then you hold the power to understand why is he behaving away, and let's give you the skill set to be able to not manipulate the behavior of the other people, but help you understand why they're behaving a certain way, because then you will get the reaction that it is that you want. And some ways that we do that is by setting a goal. So for example, I'll give you an example, and being in a room full of women here, like, you can't judge me for this one because I'm a man, because I only coach women, because I care about men are fucking annoying to coach, right? But like, I'll use an example. One of my clients, Nicola, her husband is a moody fucker every time he comes back from work, which then triggers him. And he's always go, oh, I've had a hard day at work. She works as well, and she deals with the kids, right? And I literally said to her, I was like, if he's complaining and moaning all the time, he's hungry and all this sort of shit, why don't you just make dinner sometimes? And she kind of got a little bit defensive. I was like, hear me out. Every time he comes back, there's conflict and you argue. Look at it this way. You want that to stop. You want to be the bigger person, but it's emotionally affecting you more than anyone. So how can you be in control of this situation instead of just getting heated and fucked off with it? How about we set a goal 2 to 3 times a week? Dinner is ready for when he comes home, so you can sit there with him and the kids, ask him how the day is. After week 3 or 4 of doing this, if the behaviors change, let's sit down with the partner and set a goal of when he comes back a couple times a week, making dinner together. But by setting a goal like this, at first it was an ego. I'm not doing this because I shouldn't have to, because he's being a dick. To nothing's going to change if you don't take an action to help make and facilitate that change. So you can either put the energy into arguing and having a problem, or how about you put the energy into understanding he's had a tough day, he feels like shit, you've had a tough day and feel like shit, but you are a stronger, better character. Let's give you the tools to get the situation that you want. And I shouldn't be saying this, mine and Carl's gender are fucking stubborn little wankers. In the sense of like, the way that we respond and do stuff is very different. We're all suckers for affection and attention. But if we're in bad headspaces, we can be very terrible at that. And then a woman will react very mirrored in the same way, which makes men's ego just go off the rails, right? So sometimes when I'm setting goals, we're not just looking at goals of how can we be better, we're looking at goals of how can we improve our situation or circumstances to make our life easier. You know, so like with my children, sometimes they're a fucking burden and they stress me out. And for those of you that are mums, don't lie, because it is true, right? We love them to bits, but when they're asleep and they shut the fuck up half the time, right? Or when they have that one moment of, I love you, daddy. Oh, thanks so much. Now go to bed. Right? But it's like, sometimes I realize, well, actually, why are they irritating me so much? Because I'm not fucking present when I'm with them. So can I make sure I finish work early enough so that when I get them in the car, rather than like, oh, guys, just shut the fuck up, they're excited to see me. So can I set the goal of making sure that I have 30 minutes to myself in peace and quiet so that I can change my emotional state so that when I pick them up, they're fucking ready. I'm ready for it. You know, so sometimes goal setting, I think, is not just about you leveling up. It's about what needs to be put in place as a stepping stone in order to facilitate the next level of change.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, the goals that we want, someone else is in control of. So how do we put something in play to help us steer what we want in a better direction. And relationships is a huge one with that. And I see it a lot of the time.
Melissa, a good question here. Did you find there was a turning point on your fitness journey for you when you weren't worried about the number on the scales as much?
Yeah, massively, actually. So there was a stage where when I was in the best shape of my life and I looked absolutely incredible, I was still really struggling with like feeling massive episodes of depression and like suicidal thoughts and tendencies. And I want to try this out here because I'm sure some of you have experienced this, possibly do still experience this, and sometimes I still do too. Having images or processes in our brain of suicidal tendencies or thoughts or processes when we feel sad, we have to sometimes recognize that's actually normal. You know, sometimes it's our brain just going, that's a much easier way to just fucking not have to deal with the pain and the problem right now. Doesn't mean we're going to act upon it. So it doesn't mean that we're a bad person because we sometimes think about it. And this is something that actually did help me with a therapist, certain little things like this, which is a case of it's okay to have that thought and process. We can't go, oh, no, that's a bad thought. You're a bad person now, you know. But what I found is when I noticed the correlation for how it is that I felt after I stepped on the scales, and I'm on about, I'd step on it in the morning, I'd step it on in the middle of the day, I'd step it on the evening. And I know full well that if I go and drink this, I'm going to weigh half a kilo heavier, but I don't give a fuck. I'm a fat piece of shit if I weigh in the evening, to the point where I would start trying to dehydrate myself just to be like, I hope I lose as much weight. When I realized how draining I was as a direct result of it, that was, I remember I said I like to do things to the extremes and I move at a very fast pace, right? I put myself in discomfort very quickly, whether I want to or not, and then I have to learn the lesson very quickly. So I actually then set myself the challenge of going, well, if I feel this fucking shit every time I weigh myself, how can I get away from it? Again, being extreme, I took a fucking hammer to the scales. I've got a video of it somewhere. I smashed them because I was like, I know if I just take the batteries out, I'll just put the fucking batteries back in. You know, I know if I take the food and I'll go put it in the boot of the car, so I try not to. I know I'm going out in my fucking boxes in the middle of the night and I'm opening that car and I'm going to go for a drive and get more fucking food, right? Like, I know myself. So I go to the extremes of situations. And don't get me wrong, after like 2-3 days, it wasn't until I was like, oh, I haven't actually weighed myself in a bit. But I noticed how much better I felt. But it was only because I journal every single day and take recognition of how I think and how I feel. And one of my favorite questions at the end of the day is, what happened today that I could have handled better? And I'd say the situation. And then the next question is, knowing what I know now, what will I do next time? Because that helps facilitate like a little seed in my head. So next time I find myself in a situation like that, I've repeatedly told myself how to handle it. So I've almost thanked my future self for like, you know, doing that situation. And I found once I'd done that, and I had to put myself in that extreme position of getting rid of the scales to kind of understand how it is that I felt, it was very freeing. But also it helps with, you know, how I was saying earlier about being able to look for wins, self-evaluating. I'd monitor how many days am I an absolute fucking moody arsehole compared to normal? You know, what were the inches across the body? What was my weight in terms of the weight that I was lifting in the gym? What was my effort? Because I was tracking the effort on my app of the intensity that I was working towards. And then I would start analyzing all the data. So even if my scale weight didn't change, I'll be like, okay, cool, but look at all the extra positives across this. And I got into the stage where as long as there's one win, it's a fucking win. You know, and I think that's one of the biggest, most important aspects of it is as long as you've got a win somewhere, you're still moving forward. And a lot of people go, I've won here, I've made progress here, but the scale weight's fucking shit. I'm a failure. And it's like, for fuck's sake, Andrew, you've lost weight. You know, you slept with your husband more than you have done in the past 10 years because your relationship's fucking better. You're sleeping better. You're experimenting with foods and you're still going to fucking complain. What's wrong with you? You know, because you had to start to learn recognizing the wins. And so for me, that only comes as an accumulation of doing the reps every day of journaling, analyzing data, searching for the wins, even in the hardest fucking places. You know, I think that's a huge thing.
Kirsty said, what helps you to trust the process without having a scale number or something to cling on to for security?
That's again having given myself a volume of opportunity, a volume of opportunity to seek wins, the volume of opportunity to track as much as I can physically track in a way that is not an emotional based decision. Like, this is logic. Did I improve? Yes or no? While the fucking weight that I lifted and the amount of reps that I lifted and the total volume that I lifted, that's a fucking positive. The amount of hours that I slept, that's a positive. every single day I write 3 to 5 wins down. So by the end of the week, I've got 21 to 30 wins. So if I've written out 30 wins, have I had a fucking good week? Well, of course I can. If you sit there on a Sunday and you go, have I had any wins this week? Most people are, oh no, it's been a fucking shit week. I won't accept it with my clients. You write me 5 minimum. I don't care how shit your week's been. I've had women who have lost their mums and dads in the same fucking month, and I still make them try and find wins, you know, because at the end of the day, there's a lot to be said about positive, you know, reinforcement of your brain to consistently seek out positive. We've got like a, what is this, like a 2-to-1 negative bias, don't we? You know, bad news travels much faster than good news, and we will very quickly seek out danger from our primal instincts of, you know, we've got to the stage in life where we used to fear a noise for a saber-toothed tiger trying to kill us, and now a notification on fucking Instagram can trigger the same emotional scared response. And it's like, come on, like we might have evolved into incredible human beings, but some of it's a bit pathetic at the same time.
The inbox anxiety that I get.
Yes, I can imagine, mate. Just to give you guys a funny one, if any of you see what's, I sent out an email to 10,000 people today. I got some triggered guy. The subject line was a bit clickbait. It was like, do you fancy it, with a wink face and question mark, right? And it was an invitation to a 6-week challenge I run. I got some very insecure guy going, why are you messaging my wife like this? I'll find out where you live and I'll fight you. It was quite a funny thing. But I get anxiety every time I send something out because I know that's going to happen. But
don't worry, mate. Don't worry, mate. It went down to 10,000 other people.
Yeah. But to answer that, to let go and find other levels of security, you have to find wins in as many opportunities as possible, but things that are much more important. Do you remember what we said at the beginning? You get into this journey because you want to feel better. So if the metrics that you're winning are things you feel better in, you feel happier, you feel more energetic, you're finding more positive wins. If that's the reason why you want to lose weight, is to feel better, why is it then when you are making the metrics that prove that you are feeling better, which is what the original goal is, why are you then letting a scale fucking weight determine that when that wasn't actually what the goal was? So reaffirming that is, I think, is a very huge thing.
And I know,
Jennifer,
with Kirsty, one of our goals was to get back consistent in the gym, which she is. So therefore, that is another metric of her progress.
I guess one of the things you want to look at, you know, we said it was, we just said that, if I'm overstepping, just say, but if one of your metrics to get more consistent in the gym, why? Like, why is one of my most favorite questions. If I've got an answer, I'll ask why 5 times. You know, like, why do I want to be more consistent? Well, what's that going to do for you? Well, I'll see better progress. Okay, what are you trying to progress towards? Well, I want to look better. Okay, well, why do you want to look better? Because I want to feel better. Why do you want to feel better? Because I'm feeling tired every single day. Okay, why are you feeling tired every day? Well, I'm probably also working too much and not sleeping. So, like, you can get into a deep rabbit hole. And until you get to the stage of asking yourself so much that then nothing else can come out because you've got to the bottom of the problem, sometimes I think there's a lot to be said about finding yourself in discomfort by asking yourself the difficult questions again and again and again until you actually get a real answer. And I think that's a very important thing. But I'm very curious, Jennifer, I'm right in the middle of that realization. I'm guessing that was when we were speaking about looking at what wins to make and what things to detach from.
Hamish said supporting relationships, change that also supports our personal fitness goals is part of the mindset journey. Cognitively, I'm there, but sometimes my emotional intelligence is lacking in the moment.
It can be. And do you know, this is the thing that's really important about whenever you've gone through something that is emotionally triggering or something along those lines, write it down. Write it down, but don't try and analyze that situation until the next day. So I've got notebooks everywhere. So if I find something challenging that emotionally charges me, I'll write it down. I'll write how I feel. We used to do this task, which was really petty. Let's say if Carl said something that pissed me off, I'd say what it was. And then it'll be like, and how do I feel about Carl? I think he's a fucking little knobhead, right? And it would just be loads of stuff, and you get it all out. But then the goal and the trick is to try and reverse that around about you. On every sentence. There was a list of questions we got. There's a woman called Byron Katie, and there's a book called Loving What Is, and she's got an app as well, right? Fucking incredible woman. It helps you learn to change and reflect certain aspect. So if I was like, it said, like, we'd ask questions. If I was like, Carl's an absolute fucking knobhead, I he drops off the face of the cliff, blah, blah, blah. And you have to get petty with it. The task is to get petty. After you do it, you have to go back through the work and look at it like, is what you said here completely true? Yes or no? There's no, what if? And you go, oh, okay, no, he's not. Or if you go, yeah, it is, it'd be like, can you be 100% that that's factual? And then you're not going, okay, no, it's not. Then you have to write the question like, what you have to turn it around about you. What is it about you that you hate yourself and that you're a little prick in this situation? Like, I'm fucking not really happy with myself because I called him a little prick and all he was trying to do was give me a bit of advice on something and I just wasn't ready to listen. And you suddenly go like, shit, like there's again a lot of work that's been done on learning to be able to like kind of like flip that script. But when it comes to like, if your emotional intelligence isn't there in the moment, understand it's really powerful. Just write it down, let your emotions come out, let them experience, but try not to let your emotions fuck up someone else's emotions, because that's you not taking responsibility of your own behavior. Remember, everybody's only responsible for their behavior, their reactions, and we only have a problem based upon our perception of how it is that we interpret it. One of you could be having a bad day, and I could say you look tired, and you'll call me a jumped up little prick because you assume that I said something negative. If you're having a fantastic day and I'm like, you look a bit tired, you'd be like, yeah, do you know what? Yeah, I've had a bit of a bad sleep last night, been working a little bit too much. Your perception of how what I've said can massively and dramatically change based upon your emotional state in that very prime moment. So if you want to learn how to work on your emotional state and learn your emotional intelligence, just like in a gym with a weight and developing a bicep, it requires repetitions. It requires repetitions of recognizing the reason why you react the way that you do, writing it down, next day looking at how could I have handled that situation better, knowing what I know now, next time I fall into a situation like that, what could I do to prevent it? This creates data inside your subconscious to help you develop it next time. It's why I'm a very big fan of the journaling process, just because it gives you a stack of undeniable evidence of how to support situations. And all emotional intelligence is like, as time goes on, your reaction to a situation speeds up. So if you're finding yourself, like with my partner, with the husband, every check-in, it was always fucking dinner went to shit because of this and because of that, and then we ordered takeaway. So that situation, which actually I probably should have added on for the women there that was going, I ain't cooking for no man, right? It probably would have helped if I added it. It was affecting her diet and the choices that she was trying to make. So we were like, you're responsible for that still. So let's take responsibility here. If you're fucking up because of this situation, stop blaming someone else. What can you do in order to make the situation better for yourself? And we created and formulated a plan around it.
A lot of it comes down to really taking complete ownership, but it's really difficult to get to that stage, isn't it?
It took me until probably only a couple of years ago that I really took full ownership. There was a lot of stuff that I used to blame on my labels, like my ADHD and this, that, and the other bit. And don't get me wrong, there is a lot of stuff that I really do struggle with, and I can't do things like quote unquote some normal people do, but everybody's also like that. We are all wired in certain ways. Like there's certain things, for example, that I do that my brain just doesn't function. Just doesn't matter how much I try and do stuff. I've got Alexa in this room and it will scream reminders at me every hour and I just ignore it. Doesn't matter what I try and do, it's because I just don't perform in certain ways. And so what I do is, rather than going, fuck, I need to keep trying to do that and keep failing, I go, okay, cool. Can I at least understand why it is that I do this way? And then I'll go, okay, cool. Well, what can I do in order to at least like make this situation better? Like we've got a fun joke inside of both my coaching business, and we call it doing a Bradley. And it's, how do I Bradley proof things? Like I'm terrible at forgetting shit left, right, and center. So I purposely speak to my phone. I speak to Alexa all the time, and I write notes down all the time. And I speak to myself. God knows how much I spend most of my time by myself speaking to Siri and Alexa like they're my mates sometimes, right? Just getting them to remind me shit. And then what I'll do is I end up having all this shit to do, and then I'll look at it and realize half that I don't need to do. Like I've got a bit of a rule of thumb. If there's something that's urgent, I feel like I need to get done, I write it down and I wait until the next day before I actually look at it. Because if it's really urgent, I'll get reminded that day that it needs to be done. But before, I used to every single day try and do tasks and realize that I set far too much for myself, burn out, feel like shit, and it was a repetitive process. So when I learned, why do I keep doing that to myself? It was like, well, that's just actually the way that I am. So how can I analyze it? And again, it just all feeds back to, because I write it down. There's something that emotionally charges me, write it down. What is it about that situation that made me feel this way? What is it that I think that I can do better? I think a lot of people try and solve problems in their head, and you can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that got you there in the first place. So you have to revisit a situation in a different emotional state. So like, you know, what I said earlier, where it was like, if I said to you, you're looking tired, you'd think, what a jumped up little prick. Depending on what emotional state you're in, how you perceive that is very different. Come back and revisit that same thing in a different emotional state, you'll see a very different side of it. So that's where your perception of things can massively change. And that book was The Chimp Paradox. I actually send that book to every new client's house as their first thing to read, because it is that powerful. I believe everybody should read it. And then once you've read it, I believe everybody should listen to the audiobook version of it, because reading something and listening to something are two very different things. Like, and I also read it. I've read it about 8 times now, because every time I read it, I take something new from it, depending on what state that I'm in at what stage.
Yeah,
Same
I
like
agree. Good books should be read multiple times.
oh, 100%. Just like think about
I'm
movies. You
reading
take
Ego is the Enemy. This is my third time reading it, and the third time reading it, it feels like it's a completely different book that I'm reading.
because depending on what situation problems you got, and it's like I was just about to say, like say with movies, you'll always see something different the next time you watch it or the next time you read it, because we take things what we want to take from in that moment. And what a lot of people don't do, right? And I say this quite a lot with a lot of people. In fact, here's a great point for a lot of you. A lot of people need to learn to, and I said this in my talk that me and Carl was speaking at the other week. A lot of people need to listen to hear, but most people listen to respond. Yeah, so a lot of people don't listen something out before they make a logical decision in their head. You know, they'll take what they want in the instance, and their chimp sits there is ready to react before something's been finished. And a lot of this happens with coaches as well. Like, so when a coach is trying to like explain something to a client's telling the problem, but a coach is just trying to solve the problem, but they haven't listened to the whole situation to get the scenario. So they haven't heard the person. They've gone, oh, there's the problem. I know how to solve that, instead of listening out to the full context of it, you know?
All right. If anyone else has any last questions, put them into the chat box. I'm going to leave you with 2 more questions, Brad, and then I'll let you go, because I know I'll keep you here all night. Number 1, what advice would you give to your younger self when you were struggling the most?
Do you know what it would be to start writing earlier, because I wouldn't want to change anything I've been through, which is quite bizarre. A lot of people always say that. I wouldn't want to, and I don't want to be that cliche. It's what's made me who I am today. Like, I'm only great with the skills that I have and the insights and development that I have as a coach and the ability to help people, because I experienced a lot of shit really quickly. And even now, whenever I find myself feeling scared of something, I'll force myself into that situation faster, because I know what comes from the other side of it. As much as it's horrible and all my senses fight against it, it would just be to lean in discomfort quicker. So if you're worried about doing that workout routine, fuck it, fucking go get it done. You know, if you're worried about ending that relationship with a friend or someone that's not helping you out, fucking do it faster. Like, yes, just like my brother's going through a situation at the moment with a very toxic relationship, and I helped him really forcefully feel the emotions quicker, because it's like, you're going to feel them at some point. You're going to feel this situation at some point. So you either deal with it, get it done quicker, harder, faster, and see out the other side of it. So if the bit of advice I was to say, it was to just go faster through that process and actually reflect on it.
And then the last one for everyone in the group here who's on a health and fitness journey, what advice would you have for them so they can, you know, stay on track and get the results they want and not fuck things up?
I would say, if you don't want to get into, let's say, journaling at the moment, because journaling is you got to do it in a specific way. It can't be like a Dear Diary, I felt like this type of situation. You're not trying to get your thoughts and your feelings out. But I would start writing questions for yourself. And I would maybe even, Carl will have some fantastic coaching questions. I know this for sure, because of some things that he's involved in. But I would ask yourself questions like, did I do my very best today? But don't be like, well, yeah, I did, because I know, like, did I do my very best in every situation that I handled today? You know, asking the questions of, if there was one thing I could have focused better on today, what could it possibly have been? You know, just go on Google literally and go and type in like powerful coaching questions. You will find so many questions, and any question is incredible, because questions are the steering wheel of the mind. And the more you become self-aware of asking yourself questions, the quicker you will find yourself coming with better solutions. A lot of people are looking for answers, but most of us have the answers ourselves. Carl will agree with this as well. Coaching doesn't come from telling you what to do. Coaching comes from facilitating the emotional and logical change by asking you the correct questions to help you come to the decision yourself. Everybody has the answer, but a lot of people need steering in the right direction to facilitate that answer, or they need challenging on their thinking with a question to make them come with an answer that's different.
Lucy said, not a question, but you said some things that have really resonated that haven't been mentioned on these lives before. So thank you. It's been really worthwhile listening to it, and I would agree with that as well.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Like, more than welcome to come on another time if there's anything that comes in it, because there's a lot that I've been through that I'm very proud of, even though there's a lot of bad stuff. There's lots that I haven't touched on inside that journey, and I think it's just like something that's enabled me to be a fantastic coach. And don't get me wrong, I still make mistakes. Okay, Carl will make loads of mistakes. I'll make loads of mistakes. Like, no coach is absolutely fucking incredible. And I think something that's actually a really good thing to do, touching on that whole relationship with your client situation, and this comes from both ends, is the understanding and knowing that, like, having a coach doesn't mean that they've all got the complete answers, but they've got the ability to hear you, listen, and help you bounce back ideas. So like the coaches that I've got, for example, like my fitness coach, he's no higher of a level than me. You know, I actually help him with certain situations in the terms of mental development, but having somebody to soundboard from that's willing to say no to me and willing to call me out on my bullshit is the biggest thing. And I think a good coaching relationship for coach, but also client, is a client to almost be willing to call their coach out on shit sometimes, you know, because a lot of the time a coach will believe that they've got your best interest at heart. And then the client doesn't want to say anything because they're like, well, they're the professional, they're the expert, but they might not fully, they might be pushing their intentions of what they want for you out. And I've been guilty of that many times before, where we just get excited because we're like, oh, they're doing so well with this, I really want to push it. And I've actually needed the client to sometimes come to me like, Brad, like, I'm absolutely buzzing with how I look right now. I don't, you know, I want to focus on, you know, these other aspects. I'm like, oh, but come on, just this little bit more. And it's like, sometimes it's actually really good to be challenged from a client to a coach. It sounds a bit bizarre.
I always say that, like, okay, your coach might be the expert of what your nutrition or your program or whatever it is, but you are the expert of you. So it's important for you to become self-aware in terms of what's in your best interest, and not just blindlessly go into whatever someone says for you, because, you know, it might not be the right thing for you. But that's the whole point of good communication, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think just as a thing for you to think about, this isn't to make Carl's life easier, because trust me, I'd like to make his life harder for you, you know, if I could possibly. If you've ever got a question from him, if you've got a problem or something you want to present him with, ask yourself the questions first. If you come armed to a conversation or a process where you've actually excluded a lot of the potentials because you've done some of the work first, you're like, Carl, I'm presented with this situation. I've done a bit of work on it. I think this might be the answer. I think this potentially could be the answer. Could you help me? If you come into it not being lazy, and a lot of clients don't do this because they're like, well, I'm paying for the advice. No, you're paying for a result. You're paying for progression. But if a coach has to spend most of their time helping facilitate diagnostics, it's much harder to facilitate that. So if you come actually preloaded with some of the work already, you're going to have a much better relationship, a much faster relationship, and you're going to overcome and exceed levels of growth in a much faster way, because you've actually been willing to go, okay, cool. How can I make the coach's life easier so they can facilitate their excellence in a better space? Because I've at least done some of the work first. So I think that's where powerful coaching questions are really helpful.
And that also comes from taking ownership on your own life and not needing to be held hand the whole way through.
Yeah, massively.
Brad, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really, really appreciate it.
More than welcome.
Folks, I really appreciate you for coming on and taking the time. I know you all have busy lives, so the fact that you are here and showing up means that you know, are dedicated to what you want to achieve, and I think that should be applauded. So again, Brad, thanks very much, and everyone for showing up. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. If you like that episode and you want to see more content like this, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you on the next one.